Ravi was known around the small town for his clumsiness. His workshop, a chaotic mess of half-repaired vehicles, often drew laughter rather than business. On the other side of town, Deepak sat in his tiny shop, scribbling numbers in his ledger, calculating how to save every rupee. Mona, meanwhile, roamed the streets with her magnifying glass, poking her nose into the most mundane happenings, convinced she was born to solve mysteries. And then there was Buntai, the enigmatic man with a sly grin, always one step ahead in every con he pulled. One lazy afternoon, as the sun beat down on the town square, the four found themselves arguing. Ravi had accidentally bumped into Deepak's scooter. Mona was accusing someone of stealing her evidence, and Buntai was just enjoying the chaos. Amid their bickering, a drunken old man staggered into the square, mumbling loudly about a treasure. His words were slurred, but one sentence caught their attention. Hidden in the forest, riches beyond imagination. Only the clever will find it. The group froze. Buntai's sharp ears perked up first, and he asked the man for details. Ravi, still rubbing his sore head from the earlier argument, chimed in with naive curiosity. Deepak, smelling potential fortune, leaned in closer, while Mona, her detective instincts kicking in, demanded proof. The old man, in his drunken haze, mumbled something about a map and pointed vaguely to the north before collapsing on a nearby bench. Suspicion lingered between the four. Each wondered whether the others would dare to pursue the lead. Buntai's calculating mind raced. He didn't trust them, but the treasure sounded too tempting to ignore. Deepak's greed overruled his usual caution. Ravi, oblivious to the risks, was already dreaming of what he'd do with a fortune. Mona, determined to crack the mystery, declared that it was her duty to investigate. After a heated discussion, an uneasy alliance formed. They agreed to work together, each hiding their true intentions. Buntai offered to arrange transportation. Deepak suggested splitting the expenses. While secretly planning to contribute nothing, Ravi volunteered his mechanical skills, and Mona took it upon herself to analyze any clues they might find. As the group dispersed to prepare for their adventure, a palpable sense of excitement hung in the air. Ravi hummed to himself. Deepak muttered calculations under his breath. Mona scribbled notes furiously, and Buntai smirked, already plotting how to outwit the others. The treasure had ignited something in all of them, a spark of hope, greed, and adventure. Later that evening, they gathered at the edge of town, where Buntai revealed an old van he had borrowed. Ravi inspected the engine skeptically, muttering about how it might not survive the journey. Mona clutched a notebook filled with wild theories about the treasure's location. Deepak, clutching his wallet tightly, refused to pay for fuel, claiming he'd brought enough snacks to compensate. As they piled into the van, the old man's words echoed in their minds. The journey had begun, and none of them knew just how chaotic and transformative it would become. The van sputtered down the uneven road, its engine groaning with every mile. Inside, the atmosphere was tense and chaotic. Ravi was at the wheel, squinting at the poorly marked road signs, while Mona sat beside him, flipping through her notebook and mumbling theories about hidden treasure. In the back, Buntai casually lounged, throwing sarcastic comments at everyone, while Deepak clutched his bag of snacks like they were more valuable than gold. It didn't take long for the group's differences to boil over. Deepak, annoyed by the bumpy ride, complained incessantly about the van's condition. Ravi, offended, snapped back, blaming Deepak for not contributing to the repairs. Mona, eager to maintain control of the situation, tried to mediate but only managed to fuel the argument further by accusing both of them of sabotaging their mission. Buntai, amused, egged them on with sly remarks, enjoying the chaos. Their first stop was a toll booth, where an overly zealous operator demanded an exorbitant fee for crossing. Deepak, of course, refused to pay, resulting in a heated negotiation that quickly escalated into a shouting match. Buntai, seeing an opportunity to showcase his skills, stepped in. With a charming smile and a cleverly fabricated story about being on an urgent medical mission, he managed to get them through without paying a rupee. Ravi was impressed, Mona was skeptical, and Deepak muttered something about how he could have handled it better. As the journey continued, their misadventures only grew. At a roadside dhaba, Ravi insisted on stopping for a quick meal. However, a misunderstanding with the waiter led to a comedic food fight, leaving them all drenched in curry and covered in flour. Mona, attempting to regain her composure, declared it was a sign they needed to focus on their goal. Deepak, furious about wasting food, vowed never to eat outside again. Buntai, meanwhile, sneaked a few extra samosas into his pocket before leaving. Their next detour came courtesy of Mona's detective instincts. Spotting an old, abandoned mansion on the way, she insisted it might hold clues about the treasure. Despite protests from the others, they reluctantly followed her inside. The mansion turned out to be anything but helpful. It was filled with creaky floors, cobwebs, and bats that sent Ravi screaming in terror. Mona, undeterred, continued her investigation until she accidentally triggered an old alarm system, causing them all to flee in panic. By the time they got back on the road, tensions were high. Deepak accused Mona of wasting time, Ravi defended her in his usual bumbling way, and Buntai casually reminded everyone that they'd made zero progress toward the treasure. Just as things seemed to settle, the van broke down in the middle of nowhere. Ravi tried to fix it, but his efforts only made things worse. Buntai suggested abandoning the van and walking, which led to another round of heated arguments. Despite the constant setbacks, an unspoken determination kept them moving forward. They each had their reasons for continuing, and though none of them trusted the others completely, the lure of the treasure was too strong to resist. As night fell, they trudged onward, unaware of the challenges still awaiting them. The group finally arrived at the edge of the forest, exhausted and irritable. The dense trees loomed ahead, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. Ravi stared in awe, unsure whether to feel excited or terrified. Deepak muttered complaints about the van being abandoned a mile back, still bitter about losing his snacks along the way. Buntai, as usual, remained unfazed, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. Mona, gripping her notebook tightly, declared that their real challenge had just begun. As they ventured into the forest, they came across an old, weathered map pinned to a tree. The map, crudely drawn with cryptic symbols and vague directions, was marked with an X deep in the heart of the forest. Ravi pointed out that the handwriting looked suspiciously similar to a child's scribbles, which earned him a glare from Mona, who insisted it was authentic. Buntai, smirking, snatched the map and led the way, claiming he had the best sense of direction. The forest, however, had other plans. The path quickly became a series of confusing trails, each looking identical to the last. Mona studied the map with exaggerated intensity, making wild guesses about which way to go. Deepak grumbled about wasting time and insisted they follow his instincts instead, which promptly led them into a patch of thorny bushes. Ravi tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but his clumsiness only added to the chaos when he tripped over a root and tore part of the map. As they pressed on, the challenges became more absurd. They stumbled upon a rope bridge that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Ravi, terrified of heights, froze halfway across, forcing the others to coax him to the other side. Later, a troop of mischievous monkeys appeared, snatching Bintai's hat and Mona's notebook. The group's attempt to retrieve their belongings turned into a chaotic chase, with Ravi accidentally falling into a shallow stream and emerging soaked and shivering. Despite the setbacks, they finally reached a clearing that seemed to match the map's descriptions. A large rock formation resembling a hidden doorway stood before them, partially concealed by vines. Mona eagerly began searching for clues, convinced the treasure was close. Deepak, skeptical but tempted by the thought of riches, helped clear the vines, revealing strange carvings on the rock. Buntai, with a knowing grin, remarked that it looked too easy and warned them to proceed carefully. Their suspicions were confirmed when they uncovered a hidden lever on the rock. Ravi, against Buntai's warnings, impulsively pulled it. The ground beneath them trembled as the rock formation slid open to reveal a dark tunnel. Excitement surged through the group, but it was short-lived. From the shadows emerged the mysterious stranger who had been tailing them, his presence sending a wave of unease through the group. The stranger, tall and imposing, introduced himself as another treasure seeker, claiming he had been following them to ensure they didn't make off with his find. Tension crackled in the air as the group realized they were no longer alone in their pursuit. Buntari, quick to assess the situation, stepped forward to negotiate, but the stranger's cold demeanor hinted that he wasn't interested in sharing. With the treasure seemingly within reach, the group's fragile alliance began to unravel further. Ravi nervously backed away, Mona clung to her notebook, Deepak clutched his bag protectively, and Buntaya's calculating expression revealed he was already devising a plan. The stakes had never been higher, and the adventure was far from over. The tension was thick as the stranger stood between the group and the tunnel leading to the treasure. His piercing gaze swept over each of them, sizing them up. Buntai, quick to mask his unease, flashed a confident smile and offered a truce, suggesting they work together to reach the treasure and split it later. The stranger, unimpressed, scoffed and told them to stay out of his way. Before anyone could respond, he disappeared into the tunnel, leaving the group to decide their next move. Deepak immediately argued that they should abandon the quest, claiming it was too risky now that someone else was involved. Mona, however, was adamant about continuing, insisting that the treasure was too important to give up on. Ravi nervously suggested they at least come up with a plan before proceeding, but Buntri, with a mischievous glint in his eye, declared they had no time to waste. Without waiting for consensus, he led the group into the tunnel. Inside, the air was damp, and the narrow passage was dimly lit by flickering torches left behind by the stranger. The group moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Mona scribbled notes furiously, convinced she could decipher any traps or puzzles ahead. Ravi, on edge, kept glancing over his shoulder, fearing the stranger might ambush them. Deepak, clutching his bag tightly, muttered complaints about how this wasn't worth the effort, while Buntri seemed unusually focused, his eyes scanning every detail. As they ventured deeper, they encountered a series of booby traps designed to protect the treasure. The first was a pressure plate mechanism that triggered darts from the walls. Ravi accidentally stepped on one, narrowly dodging the darts with a scream. Mona, using her keen observation skills, identified the pattern on the floor to navigate through safely. Next came a collapsing walkway over a deep pit, which Buntai managed to cross by swinging on a loose rope, taunting the others as he went. Deepak, refusing to risk his life, attempted to crawl across on his stomach, eliciting laughs from Ravi despite the situation. Finally, they reached the treasure chamber, a vast cavern glittering with gold coins, jewels, and ornate artifacts. The group stood frozen in awe, the sheer scale of the treasure overwhelming them. Mona declared it the find of a lifetime, while Deepak's eyes gleamed with greed. Ravi, for once, was speechless, and Buntai immediately began plotting how to claim the best pieces for himself. Their celebration was cut short when the stranger reappeared, stepping out from the shadows with a smug expression. He revealed that he had been waiting for them to trigger the final trap, which required multiple people to unlock the treasure. Before they could react, he pulled a lever, causing the chamber to shake violently. The walls began to close in, and gold started pouring into a hidden chute, vanishing from sight. Panic erupted. The group scrambled to escape as the chamber collapsed around them. Buntai, using his quick thinking, found a hidden exit, and they all sprinted toward it just as the cavern sealed shut behind them. Outside, gasping for breath, they realized they had lost everything. The treasure was gone, and so was the stranger. Sitting in the dirt, covered in dust and scratches, the group burst into laughter. The absurdity of their journey, filled with chaos and near-death experiences, suddenly seemed comical. Mona joked that at least they had a great story to tell. Deepak grumbled about his lost profits, but admitted he'd never forget the adventure. Ravi, still shaken, promised to stick to repairing scooters from now on, while Buntai smirked, already planning his next scheme.